special thing in store. The light bulb inside my head says, get out and play, 'cause you never feel this way. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day. It's my lucky day, my lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold, a rabbit's foot or to be told. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day.
Hello, my friends. Happy Tuesday. I am so excited to be here with you, and I'm so excited to have my guest with me today. I have Jillian Rothschild-Scholar, who is a Feng Shui practitioner. And I don't know if you have had exposure to Feng Shui. I had heard a little bit about it, didn't know exactly what it was. But learning even just a little bit and making small changes to my environment just has made a huge world of difference. So I was really excited to invite Jillian to have this conversation. She helps ambitious people who are feeling like there's something a bit off in their life and want to move forward with greater clarity, confidence, and ease. She is a master of Feng Shui with classical training and the ancient knowledge of the more than 400-year-old Wu-Chang Feng Shui mastery lineage, which served as her fundamental training. She provides practical solutions for contemporary lifestyles using the knowledge of classical tried and true systems and approaches. She simplifies complex information so clients may act quickly to improve the physical, emotional, and/or spiritual aspects of their lives. Jillian, welcome. Thanks for being here with me.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
So, if you are tuning in with us, we would absolutely love it if you drop a comment in the chat. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know what experience you've had with Feng Shui, what questions you have. And we'd love to pull you into the conversation as well. So, Jillian, tell us, where does your story start?
Well, I'm a nice Jewish girl from Ohio who's studying ancient Chinese metaphysics. Like, how does that happen? So my first memory of being interested in anything alternative was having a fight with my dad because he wanted the newspaper page that also had the crossword puzzle on it and the horoscope was on the same page. And I was like, I want the horoscope. And he's like, well, I'm going to do the crossword puzzle. That's my first memory of being interested in anything sort of unconventional. And that led me to a significant self-help period in my life, in my late teens and early 20s into college. I feel like I read every self-help book that was out there, which stumbled me upon trying to understand myself better. And the way that I did that was getting interested in Chinese metaphysics, Chinese astrology, and that snowballed into Feng Shui. I have a friend of mine who now lives in Colorado. We met each other in Los Angeles, and I came to her and I was like, this book is on Feng Shui and this is what I want to do. And so I got into it, like every book that I could get my hands on. I spent 20 years in college admissions counseling, so I still had like a regular conventional day job. But meanwhile, I'm studying, I'm learning, I'm practicing. I found a classical master teacher and I studied with her for a year and a half doing private mentoring. And then as the universe would be, right? In 2019, I was working full-time, very unhappy in my job. I was going to stay because I made really good money. The Feng Shui was working. I did really, really well. But we all got laid off. There was a massive layoff. And so people are naturally like, they're crying. Like, oh my God, my job, my life. I totally get it. Whereas I was, it's my day. I get to leave this and I get to go do my thing. And so I was like, here's my badge. I sort of chucked it over to the HR lady and I was like, I'm out of here. And I haven't looked back. It's full time. Feng Shui all the time.
That is amazing. So let me set up for you my limited experience with Feng Shui. So we moved into this house in 2020 and the height of the pandemic, we bought this house specifically because it had enough bedrooms for each of my kids to have one and spaces for my husband and I to both work. My space is in the corner of our bedroom. And I grew up in a home where furniture belonged against the walls. So my desk faced the wall. I faced my desk, which faced the wall, and my back was to the door, which most of the time was fine. And sometimes I'd be on Zoom meetings and then get freaked out because someone would walk in and you never know what you would see on my Zoom screen. And I just had this feeling that, like, this it's fine, but it's not great. And I remember being in a women's networking meeting, and the speaker that week was someone who was a Feng Shui practitioner. And I remember she asked if we had questions, and I was like, "Yeah." So, like, my back is to the door, and I just don't love it. And she was like, "I can see why you don't." She's like, "What if you moved your desk 90 degrees?" And my first thought was, "It's not going to fit if I turn it." But I was like, "Okay, I'll give it a shot." And it was funny because I turned my desk to the side and I smooshed it back to the wall, kind of as close as I could go to make sure there was enough space. And then I was like, "Oh, it's a whole new world this way." Like, I can see out the window and I can see my plants and I can see who's coming in the door. And little by little, I was like, "I need more space." And so at my desk was prepped this way more, taking up more space. And then I was very intentional about what I would fill with my background and what I could put in there, because that is what people see when, I'm on these calls. And it is amazing to see as I've made just these little shifts, because it's a little shift, turning my desk sideways just made work so much more productive, made me so much more focused, and it just feels better.
Yeah.
So, can you start from the beginning and tell us what Feng Shui actually is?
That's a fabulous question. To me, Feng Shui is a support system for our lives. When our lives have support through our physical environment, then it's just easier to achieve the things that we want in life, like well being, good relationships, good health, financial prosperity, all of the things that we want. It's just easier to achieve when we are in a place where we feel like we're supported. And so it makes sense that when you make like a small change, it doesn't seem like a big deal, could be significant. In the practice that I'm in, I work with energetics. I don't work with aesthetics. I'm not the person that you called is like, "Oh, what color should my drapes be?" or what rug should I put here? Your home should not look like a Chinese antique store. When you're working with energetics, what you're doing is you're actually aligning yourself physically with the good energy that is supportive for you.
Hmm.
And it could just be that certainly we want to see what's coming in the door. So there's that aspect of turning your desk, but it also could be that the actual direction that you were facing was unfavorable for you. And then when you made a little bit of a turn, you ended up aligning with yourself with more favorable energy. And then things just got better and it started to create a snowball effect of things moving forward. Sometimes all that it is aligning yourself. And it's not always convenient. I mean, I'll say this, not always convenient, but it can make a huge difference.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to clarify that direction piece.
Okay.
So this is west, this is north. So I used to face west, now I face north. Like,
Okay.
does that mean something? I
It
mean, it must
does.
mean something.
Of course, it means something. So there are lots of different systems in Feng Shui. One of the very effective systems is a system called eight mansions. Eight mansions is actually technically it's for the house, and our modern interpretation of that is using it for a person. And so what we in Chinese metaphysics mastery we have done is created this formula that basically says based on the when you were born, whether you were assigned a gender male or female at time of birth, there's a special calculation and it gives you something called a Ming Gua or a life Gua, which basically is palace. So it's like a life star number, if you will. And that number breaks people up into two different groups, either East life group or West life group, based on your life star. And so East life group have good directions like north, south, east, southeast. West life group have good directions like west, northwest, southwest, northeast. So if you are in fact an East life group person and you were facing west, that didn't work. And then all you had to do is turn your desk north and poof, you're in a better direction.
Okay, so what happens if you are an northeast person? Is that what you called it?
East life group or
Okay.
West life group.
Okay, cool. So what if you are an East life person and you share a home with people who are West life people? Like, how
Well,
does that play out?
how does it play? Like, especially if your spouse is the opposite direction, right? So
Mhm.
typically, so this is a very common question. And the good news is there's an answer for that. It's a much more complicated answer, and this is why you hire a practitioner. And we always want to support the person that is typically the breadwinner first, or if someone's dealing with a major health issue, we want to support that person. So depending on what the issue is that's being presented is what we're going to focus on. But let's just say you're the breadwinner. Of course, we're going to support you first because we want to make sure you have all the support to bring in all of the resources to the family. And then maybe what we do for your spouse is give your spouse something secondary, like a desk or a different seating position in another part of the home, or a specific angle. And this is where a practitioner comes in. We can give you like a very specific, narrow little angle where we could adjust your bed a tiny little bit so it's good for both of you. So there's almost always a solution. My teacher used to say, for every problem, there is a relief. It's out there. You just have to know which one it is.
I love that. And now I'm like, my wheels are turning and I'm like, want to look up everybody's chart in my house to see, because around the same time that I made the shift and moved my desk from facing west to facing north, my husband moved his desk from facing north to facing west. So now I'm really curious. And I think he just did it because of like space in the room. Because I'm not sure that he is somebody who really picks up on unsubtleties of energy. I love him very much, and I don't think he pays attention to stuff the way I pay attention to stuff like that. So now I'm like super, super curious. So how do I learn what direction I am?
So actually on my website, there's a free toolkit, and it's a really cool PDF document, and it gives you the calculation. All you have to do is look up the year that you were born and what you were assigned at the time of birth, your gender, and then it will tell you what your groups are. And then in the toolkit, it will tell you how to use it. Super easy, and it's free.
Very cool. And this is it, right?
Yes, 8 Mansions toolkit.
Perfect. All right, cool. So Feng Shui supports us. Give me the summary of what it does. It supports us with energetics in our homes and in our lives? No.
Right. So to me, again, Feng Shui is a support system for our lives. And when our lives have support through our physical environment, then it's just easier to achieve the things that we want. And again, I'm working with energetics. So Feng Shui, when it's translated, literally stands for wind, water. And the Chinese, the poem, if you will, we use the word poem, the phrase that we were all taught was qi rides on the wind and it stops at the boundary of water. So this is why in Feng Shui water is such a big deal, because the theory is that the qi goes down the mountain and it stops at the boundary of water. And in ancient times, you would live near a river, you would live near a pond, you would need a water source like a well or something. And so the qi would collect and then you would direct it into your home based on the orientation that it's in. And that's what we're doing with classical Feng Shui. We're understanding where the qi is coming from on the mountain, the rise of the land, the orientation of the property, where the roads are, if you have a water feature like a pool or a spa, or maybe you actually have a creek nearby. Those are all part of how we calculate the formulas in Feng Shui.
Very cool. So is looking up our chart, is that the first step? Is that the place we go to first? Or
it's one place you can start, actually.
Okay.
So in Chinese metaphysics, we have something called the 3 lux. It's known as the cosmic trinity. And the idea is that we have something called heaven luck, human luck, and earth luck. So heaven luck is what you're born with. It's what's fated for you. You can't crawl back in your mother's womb and be born at a different time. What is bestowed upon you is given the moment that you take your first breath. So the timing of your birth gives us information about who you are as a person, the likely choices that you're going to make, the sort of life path that you're going to take. We can see that in the chart. Then you have earth luck. Earth luck is the third one, the sort of the bottom one. Literally, it's the feng shui. It's your physical environment. It's the space that you're in. And then human luck is your free will. It's the choices that you make. And so we could reasonably say that you can affect about 2/3 of your life, approximately, based on the choices that you make and the way that you sculpt or organize, live in your physical environment. Some of it is just your fate. Some of it is your destiny because those are your choices. There's a difference between fate and destiny. Fate is what's given to you and destiny is what you choose. Ooh. And so to answer your question, when I'm doing feng shui, of course, I'm going to take into account the heaven luck aspect of it. And so we pull something called a Batsa chart. It's known as the 4 pillars of destiny. Ba means 8 and Tse means characters. And so you get all of this amazing information, and you can check it out on my website. There's a free calculator. And so you could maybe go to the Chinese restaurant and you look at the placemat and you're like, oh, I was born in the year of the tiger. But then you look at the description and you're like, that doesn't really sound like me. That just sort of like me, but not really. And that's because that's like 25% of the picture. That doesn't take into account all of the information of your birth. And so we take the Gregorian calendar, we fix it, we move it all around in the Feng Shui, which is the Chinese calendar, and we get these 4 pillars of destiny, which gives us a very clear picture of the choices that you make, your personality traits, the things that are going to happen in your life. And we can use that to identify timing for certain things, like having a baby or making a job change, and how that can impact your feng shui. We want to know if something is going on with you energetically, personally, so that we can use the physical environment to support you if there's an imbalance.
So we could start either, it seems to me there could be several starting points. It could
Yes.
be, I want my life to, I just want my environment to just feel better, right?
Yeah.
And that way maybe we start with the chart. But we could also maybe start with, this thing is happening, I feel because of it. And then we reverse engineer it. Is that?
Yeah, actually we do it the other way, right? If you were like, oh, my life sucks right now, things are challenging, I'm unhappy, I can't seem to get where I'm going, that can certainly be reviewed in a Chinese astrology chart. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, if things are not going where I want them to go, I should look at my feng shui and I ought to be getting into energetic alignment. Once you start doing those things and making changes, if it's not clicking, then you really call for help. And this is why you call for help. Or if you're like, this is all super interesting and I don't have time for any of this, again, you call for help. That's what we have practitioners for. Like, I also am not fixing the plumbing in my house. I'm calling a plumber. Like, I can learn about it. It's just going to take me a lot longer. Yeah. So I'll just call somebody.
I love that. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous reminder. So let's say I get my home all feeling in alignment, right? I've figured out where things need to be energetically. How often should we expect to make changes in our environment?
You get an A+. That's the best question.
Oh.
So the answer to that question is we should be looking at it yearly, because every year the animal sign, the zodiac animal sign in Chinese changes. And there's a system called flying stars, and the flying stars, literally, they fly, they move, they're not fixed. The energy shifts every year. And so it could be that in your house, even though you've got it situated, you come up against a year where something just isn't going right and you're like, I don't understand. It could be in your Chinese astrology chart. And it could be that there's some energetic component going on in the house. And so with all my clients, I make little updates every year, and we just sort of fine tune and we tweak to adjust for the energy of the year and anything that's going on in the chart as well.
I love that. And so when you say energy of the year, I'm guessing you mean around the time of Chinese New Year?
Yeah, so there's 2 different calendars in the Chinese culture. One is the lunar calendar. So this is the more popular Chinese New Year, and it shifts. It could be January, it could be February. Like, we never really kind of know when Lunar New Year is going to be. The solar calendar is very fixed and very reliable, and that's what we use for things like feng shui and in my practice in Chinese astrology, because the sun is very reliable. It doesn't move around like the moon does, right? It's like this up, down, up, down. Okay, the sun comes up. We know exactly how it's going to behave. And the energy shifts on the Chinese calendar almost always February 4th of every year. And so this is why I have this like belief in my life. January comes around on the Gregorian calendar and we're like, oh, it's the new year and I'm going to make all these resolutions and I'm going to change my life. And 3 weeks later, things have not changed. You have not stuck to your routine. You didn't do the thing that you were going to do. And that's because really what you're doing is you're riding on the energy of the previous year. But then come February, things start to shift. Like, all of a sudden you've got like a different perspective on life. You've got new energy and like you can do things. And if you had just said to yourself January 1st, come February 4th, that's the day I'm going to start the new thing, then you have a better chance of success.
Oh, I love that so much. You are the second person I've had on my live stream this year who has said that exact same thing.
Oh, okay.
And this year is the first year that I really noticed that January 1, I wasn't ready to go. Because every other year, I like spend the month of December doing this huge reflection, this big goal setting program. And January 1, I hit the ground running. And it's usually I have a project that I start, I take a class, I do something big. And this year, not only did I not start any of that in January, but by the time February came around, the message I got was keep on keeping on. Like, don't bring anything new in. You don't need to divide your attention 1,000 more ways. Just implement and integrate what you've already got.
Love it.
And on one hand, it feels so weird not having this big performative goal that I can like talk about and share with other people, like, I'm going to do this big thing. So it was really kind of a letdown when people in January were like, what are your big goals? And I was like, I have not set any. But on
Yay.
the other hand, it feels so good to not have to do another thing.
Thing. Yeah. Yeah. It could be that the energy of this year in your chart keeps you more grounded or has given you a different kind of focus. It could be that what you were encountering previous years got you going and got you moving. So that's just like from a yearly perspective. And also in our Chinese astrology chart, we have something called 10-year luck pillars. And so in addition to our regular natal chart, which has 8 characters or 8 boxes, we have 10-year sections of time in our lives where we get extra energy. It could be, I mean, I'm not looking at your chart, but it could be that maybe you're entering into a new luck pillar where the energy is shifting. And so you're not the go-getter that you were 5 years ago. And so your priorities are going to shift, and that's okay.
Yeah. So I imagine you were very busy in February, March. What are the other busy times for you or any feng shui practitioner?
So typically, most practitioners are busy. Well, I mean, I don't know, everybody runs their business a little bit differently. Most practitioners are busy December through February into March because
Okay.
with my existing clients, we want to get them updated information in January so they can be ready for February. But I actually start that process in November or December because I have so many clients I've got to prepare, right? And everybody wants to talk about Chinese New Year. So in December and in January, people are calling, going, "Oh, will you come talk to me? Can you be speaker for this event?" Da, 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 right? So people want to hear about Chinese New Year. That's definitely a time of year that is quite busy. And then the rest of the year, it could be new clients coming in. I also do divination practices. I'm currently in the middle of teaching a class. So I actually teach Chinese astrology to a group of really amazing people who want to learn more, how they can incorporate this into their own business. And so there's other things to do throughout the year than just feng shui. Because in my practice, it's not singular. I have met a few practitioners who like do the one thing and that's they do really, really well. Like in fact, my teacher was sort of a purist. She was like, I do feng shui. This is what I do. But I found for me, if I'm going to have a really effective relationship with my clients, I want to see a bigger picture. Sort of like if you hired a carpenter to come to your house to build a table, you wouldn't expect them to only bring a hammer, right? They need to bring a hammer and a level and like they have to bring all the tools. So I've built up a practice where I'm bringing in this tool for here and this tool for here and this tool for over this is what I need. And then when I know which tool I'm using, it gets my results cleaner, clearer, more effective for my clients. So you use the right tool at the right time.
I love that so much because I am always talking about having a toolbox in journaling, that there's no one size fits all that's going to do it. Your hammer's really great for jobs that require a hammer,
Yeah.
but a hammer is never going to fix my bathroom sink. When our bathroom sink
No.
broke, we needed a pair of pliers and a screwdriver and a wrench. And having all of those tools and knowing when and how to use them helps us get our fix-it jobs done. The
Yes.
same with journaling. We need all kinds of different practices, all kinds of different tools to be able to really get at what is going on in our lives. So I love that you have a range of tools that you use with your clients as well.
Yeah. Also makes it more interesting as a practitioner. I'm not doing the same thing all the time. In fact, what I say to my clients is, if you've seen one house, you've seen one house. Because it's not like you sort of like brain doctors say the same thing about brain injury. If you've seen one brain injury, you've seen one because everything is completely unique. The whole experience is like a couture experience tailored to that individual and their experience because the way you live in the house and the way that house is going to support you could be very different than the next person who's moving in behind you. You could have had amazing luck in that house and the people you sell the house to could come in and their luck could be really poor. And it's not because you didn't do something right. It could just be their energy mixing with that house.
Interesting. So our home environment has an energy all of its own.
Indeed.
And we have energies. It kind of that just makes me think of matchmaking, right? Like
Yes.
people together and
Yes.
people jive or they don't jive, or they
Mm-hmm.
could work hard and learn to jive.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some people who just jive right off the bat.
Right. And people, real estate agents know this, right? Because they take people all around all these different houses and you walk in and you're like, I don't like the way it feels in here. I don't like the layout. This doesn't feel good. Or someone will walk in and be like, oh, I love it here. This is amazing. It's my house, right? Like they just feel really comfortable. And it could be that the house has something that isn't in your chart that you need. It could be that you found the energetic alignment that is favorable for you in that particular house. And this is also why sometimes people don't leave a house for like decades, because they're sort of in a house that is so supportive. It's very hard to leave. It's like to pry them out of the house, literally.
Interesting. So I can totally see how Feng Shui, how we need to pay attention in the spaces we live in.
Yeah.
What about the spaces we visit? What if we're going out to dinner or we're taking a class or we're going to all these different places? Because most of us, even when we work at home, aren't at home all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, how does Feng Shui come into play there in all kinds of different places?
You get an A+ for the best questions. I love this conversation. There's a reason why there's a franchise of grocery stores, but you go to the grocery store across town because you know the layout. It just feels better. You think the produce looks better. The people are nicer. Da, da, da. Or I like this restaurant and there's a chain of them. But the one over here, I'm just going to go to the one over here, the different one over there, because they're not that's Feng Shui. You're in an environment where you feel better. Don't get me wrong. Whole Foods does an amazing job of making us, turn over our paycheck because everything looks beautiful. But if that particular location is not so favorable for you, you might be like, I'll just go over here to this other store, even though it's not Whole Foods. And that's okay.
No,
Because it's lined up for you.
That makes perfect sense. So we moved in 2020. The town we came from had a grocery store I totally loved. The nearest grocery store of that kind there's one that's just a little bit closer and it's more convenient. And also, I do not shop there. There's nothing wrong with it, but the layout's flipped and it just takes me longer to find things. And I
Yep.
just don't like it.
Yep. And there are some companies, by the way, that really, they actually use Feng Shui, big corporations. Like we talk about Feng Shui as a big component. There's big energy centers all over the globe, like Hong Kong and London and New York. And these are sort of big financial centers. And this is why huge companies have their headquarters in some of these big spots, because the Feng Shui is good. And if their headquarters are in a place where the Feng Shui is good, then the business is going to go good as well. But also like just the entrance, like if you've ever been to a Costco, just want to say Costco's got some good Feng Shui going on. And you can see it through the energetic alignment. You can see it in churches. You can see it in government buildings. If you know what you're looking at, you can see what the alignment is and why it works.
That's really interesting. I'm kind of laughing because we went to Costco earlier today, and our Costco near us, and we're pretty new to Costco because there's a Sam's Club in town. So we went there for years because it was more convenient. But Costco has plants in the front, and that's what drew me in. I'm a big gardener, and I'm like, oh, I can't look for what I came for because I have to look at plants. I'm not intending to buy any, but I need to be around plants for just 24 seconds before I can tackle the rest of the store.
Yep. Costco does a really good job of telling you what you need. Yeah. But that's a business decision. But the Feng Shui is quite good at Costco. And this is why all over the world, people will like travel to whatever city and bring their Costco card and go like, I went to Costco in Spain and I went to Costco in England and Korea, like those kinds of things.
That's funny. All right. So can you talk us through some certain scenarios where somebody might want to reach out for help with Feng Shui? Like what kind of life situations?
So I get challenging stuff. I once upon a time I said to my teacher, I was like, why? Why am I getting these really hard things? And she's like, because you are set up to do them. And of course, then I look at my chart, and yes, in fact, I'm set up for those things. Typically, people contact for help with Feng Shui when they're at the end of the rope, when they've sort of tried everything else, and they're usually dealing with something significant. It could be a relationship issue, potential divorce, or partnership breakup, or some other calamity of some kind. Financial issues, big issues like bankruptcy and legal things, and not usually small stuff when you're coming to look at Feng Shui. Could also be a significant health issue. Maybe you moved into a house and 6 months later, you've got a long list of health things that you didn't know what was going on. And usually health, wealth, and relationships are the reasons that people contact for Feng Shui. If you want interior design, call an interior designer. If you're dealing with an issue that you need resolved, then you look for other resources, sometimes things that are unconventional, to get help. And this is a system that has been used for centuries. It's just newer to us here in the West, but not so new out there in the East.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you said that it's what people reach for when they don't know what else to do, or something like that.
Yep.
Like, we've tried everything
Yep.
else we can think of. So from where you stand, the clients that you have the best results with, where did on the timeline do they come to you?
Well, the answer is it depends on what the situation is. So this is always my answer. It depends. So this is why I say I help people who feel like something is off, because I truly believe that people are naturally intuitive. And the bulk of my clients have something that makes them naturally intuitive. They can feel that it doesn't feel right. Something isn't going the way that they want it to go. Or they are ambitious and they already are doing all the other things, the meditation, the affirmations, the journaling, the nutritionist. They're already doing, and then they're sort of open to like, oh, well, there's Feng Shui, and I need to incorporate this in my life. And they get really excited about it. So the answer as to when you come in is when it feels right for you. Of course, it's great if you can bring in a Feng Shui consultant and design your dream home from scratch, so that we can measure the mountain and find out where the water is and align the house and have the builder orient the land just in the right way so that it's convenient for you and it's supportive for you. But it doesn't always work like that. 99% of the time, we're like shopping for a home and we walk in and it feels good. But then later on, it doesn't work out for one reason or another, and you don't know why. You were like, I loved it. I bought it. My realtor said we thought it was great. And then 2 years later, my life is not going the way I want it to go. And so then you're like looking for other reasons and other resources to get help. Because people can only take so much.
Yeah. And so I imagine Feng Shui, like journaling or anything else, like there's no one size fits all, and it's
Correct.
not always a magic bullet.
No, it's never one thing, especially in Feng Shui. It's never one thing. Usually it's the stove and the door and the chart and the neighbor is doing construction. Like, there's never one thing. And so often there's usually there's a list of things that we say, like, you need to do these 5 or 6 things in order to get your setup structured in a way that's supportive to you. It's never one thing.
Interesting. I have about 6 questions half formed in my head. I think you can probably see my wheels turning. So for those of us who need to do things one step at a time, right? Can we make those changes one step at a time, or do we have to do everything at once?
So if you are a one-stepper, start with the toolkit. Use the 8 Mansions toolkit, figure out what direction your bed is, figure out what direction your desk is, and change one thing at a time. If you feel like things aren't connecting or you're not getting enough of an oomph, enough of a kick. So I call it a kick. When things are really bad and then you start changing things, you get, all of a sudden it feels like there's synchronicity and things feel better. And all of a sudden, like, the phone's ringing and, oh my God, I got the job that I wanted. And it sort of feels like magic, although it's just not. It's just that things were so bad, you were like digging a hole for yourself and you had to stop the digging. Or if it's like hemorrhaging, like you're hemorrhaging money, you have to stop the bleeding and then you can heal, right? So the toolkit is a great place to start. But as a practitioner, I can't just give you one thing to do unless you're super resistant. And I did have a client like that. But usually I'm giving you a few things to adjust at the same time, and it's called a setup. Now, this client, right, was a bit of a hoarder. She's one of my best clients. She was working with a professional. I want to just be clear, I'm not a psychiatrist. She was working with a professional, and she's like, I want to fix things. So I went into the house, made a long list of things that she needed to adjust, along with clearing clutter, right, which she did. But she was very reticent to make any changes. And I could see that her bed was on a formation called a weeping formation. And it's just a terrible, and I know this because I slept on it for a while, so I know what it feels like. And I was like leaving the house, and I was like, please, if you do one thing, please, if you do one thing, please, will you turn your bed from this one wall to a different wall? And she's like, I'm not going to do that. No. 3 days later, she called me. The first night she didn't do it. The second night she decided to change her bed. She called me on the third date and said, I've had the best night's sleep I've had in this house since I moved in. What else do I need to do? And it was all that it took was for her to have one night of good sleep. And I've been working with her for years. She changed her kitchen. We renovated the kitchen. We renovated the backyard. And we did all these things. And she's doing really, really well. But if you are running up against a lot of issues, sometimes you can only do one thing. I get it. It's overwhelming and it's not always convenient. But if you're really in a tough spot, what are you willing to do to make a change? And you do have to ask yourself that question.
Yeah, that is a really great question. So when you work with people, do you have to go into their homes to do this work, or can you do this virtually?
So I can do this virtually. This is why my business grew during the pandemic, because a lot of people were not set up to do remote Feng Shui consultations. But because I'm working with alignment, I can often see a property from an aerial view, and you can give me a visual tour like on a video, and we can take a look inside, and a lot of things that I can do remotely. Don't get me wrong. If you're doing a major project, of course, I need to be there in person to take a very accurate measurement, depending on what the scope of the project is. But a lot of times we can do things remotely.
Very cool. So I know there's no one size fits all,
Right.
but are there some general recommendations of things we should all have in our homes, or general advice on where things should live?
Yeah, this is a really great question. Really good questions. I just love this conversation. So my teacher used to say, everyone wants the whole enchilada when it comes to Feng Shui, but sometimes all you get are the nachos. And the nachos are your door, your bed, your office, your kitchen, and your stove. Could be a water feature. And there are some very specific rules about where we want water placed in the current time period that we're in. So if you follow those rules, it can enhance the Feng Shui. And then, of course, we need to make changes year to year. So just as an example, right now in my practice, water could potentially be placed in the east, southeast, north, and southwest. So if you are somebody who has a major water feature in the west, like maybe your house faces east and you have a pool in the back, that might be particularly challenging for you. You're not going to move a pool. People are not going to move a pool, but there are other things that we can do. But if you are going to install a pool, like the conversation I just had with my client an hour ago, we have to be very precise about where we're going to put the pool, because the pool becomes a wealth generator when it's placed properly.
Interesting. Okay, so what if someone does not have a water feature on their property? Is all hope lost?
No, of course not. We can install a water fountain in the right place. I have a lovely water feature outside my home that didn't exist there before I put it there on purpose, with intention and with a formula. And it's very interesting. It's attracted some interesting wildlife, but it's also attracted some interesting opportunities as well. And so when you know where to put it and you know when to place it, so location is Feng Shui, and then timing is everything. So when you do the right thing at the right time, you get beautiful results.
That is very, very cool. Okay, you can, again, see my wheels turning. It's only
Yeah.
going to be a matter of time before I convince my husband that this is the next project we invest in for our home,
Yeah.
is for you to come and give us a once over. So let's talk for a minute. I know when we chatted the last time, we talked a little bit about Feng Shui and journaling. Can
Mm-hmm.
you talk about the relationship you see between the two of them, or how you use journaling?
So journaling has a very important place in my heart, because like I said, I had this like self-help period and I did a lot of journaling. In fact, I was just cleaning out my dad's house. He's been in that house for 40 years. And I found a lot of my journals, and I opened them up and I was like, what did I write? What was I thinking? What was going on then? And then I purposely like put them away and like recycled them, because I don't need to look at that. But it's very helpful when you begin this process to start to understand what your goals are, what it is that you want to achieve, and then how to reverse engineer it. So if I want to have financial independence, what is it going to take for me to get there? Do I need to stop accumulating material things? Do I need to stop buying stuff? Like often I'll walk into a house and be like, that was money once.
Ooh.
Yeah, and that's now just a thing. Do you need the thing? And what do I need to do to feel better about myself in life without the thing? Because we buy stuff because we think it'll make us feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a significant component in Feng Shui. And then going through life, evaluating year to year, years that were favorable, times that were more challenging. Maybe you look at a particular year and then you break it down by months and go, this is what I want to accomplish this month. This is the issue I ran into. This is the challenge I had, or this month was really great and everything just flowed for me and everything was fantastic. And we love those times. We want to know when that is so that when it comes again, we can optimize on it. We can leverage that timing when we know it's favorable for us. The energy actually works for us. That's one of the ways that I use journaling with my clients. It's not very often, but I do use it.
I love that so much because I just told somebody earlier today, journaling for me is like having my very own time machine. Being able to go back to a certain period of my life and really look at, oh, what what went well for me here? What were the circumstances around it so that I can replicate it? And likewise, like if I'm going through a particular challenge, what did I do back then when I faced a similar thing that I can apply this time?
Yeah.
And you supplied us with a journal prompt that I absolutely love. I'm going to pull it here on screen. If I were living in a home that supported me, I would. Can you talk a little bit about this journal prompt and why you liked it enough to share it?
Right. So again, I'm back to me, Feng Shui is a support system for our lives. And when our lives have support through our physical environment, then it's easier to achieve the things that we want. So if I'm living in a home that supports me and I'm living in a physical environment where I'm feeling supported, what would I do? I would blank. And what is that for you? For you, maybe it's traveling. For somebody else, maybe it's starting a business. For somebody else, maybe it's trying to have a child. For somebody else, maybe it's going back to school or going for a promotion. We all want things that are different. And this is why Feng Shui is a very customized experience. And so when we can envision and live with intention through our physical environment, then it's easier to achieve the things that we want.
I love that so much, Jillian. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So, folks who want to work with you, what does working with you look like? What is your process? What do you do for your clients? What does that look like?
So the very first thing that I typically do is offer my potential clients a complimentary discovery session, because it's true that you may be calling me going, I need Feng Shui. And then in the conversation, you don't really need Feng Shui. Maybe you need a different service. And so what I'm using all these tools, I'm going to identify which particular service I'm going to make a recommendation as a best fit for you. Just as a case and example, I had a lovely man from Tucson call me, said, come down and do my Feng Shui. And we had a discovery session. And in the conversation, it was very clear he didn't need a Feng Shui consultation. He needed a Chinese astrology reading. He needed a Batsa reading. And in the reading, it was very clear he wasn't happy where he was living because he needed to travel. Like, I was like, you need to not be here. Like, go. And so he became like this remote worker and he changed his life and now he travels the world. He's so happy. And he was like, I'm so glad that you didn't try to sell me a Feng Shui consultation because it was a lot more money, right? It was just a better fit for him. So the very first thing that we do is start with a discovery session to understand what's going on, what services I'm going to recommend, understand what you've tried, what you haven't tried. And then if we agree that there's a fit, and this is why I say fit, because I think it's really important. If we think that there's a fit, we can talk about how to move forward, because I have a very clear expectation of what I want out of my clients, and you need to feel comfortable with me. If I'm going to come into your home, like, it's a very private thing, and you could be sharing really intimate details about your life. And so I'm very careful about making sure the fit is good for everybody involved. And then if we agree there's a fit, then we talk about how to move forward.
Beautiful. So if folks want to get a hold of you, how can they find you? Where's the best place?
So the business is Feng Shui in Motion. The website is FS for Feng Shui, fsinmotion.com. that's the best place to start to reach out. I have blogs, interviews, and freebies. There's all kinds of information. If you aren't sure, getting on the newsletter is a really good place to start. Get to know me, listen to how I'm sharing information, what I've got going on, and then at some point when the timing is right, you'll know how to reach me.
Awesome. Well, Jillian, thank you so much. This has been so enlightening, and my wheels are now turning. I'm probably going to come up with 17 more questions afterwards. So I'd love to continue this conversation.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Thank you for tuning in with us, my friends. So glad you were here, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.